Can you talk us through just some of the basic steps when it comes to engaging with people as a communicator and people out there who may want to improve? Is there, some sort of anecdotes from the book that you can share about that process and how to be better at it with our friends and family?
Number one, I think, is just be as educated as you can. Now, we're not ever going to know everything, and someone might say something we don't have the perfect response to. But I think before, just take the time, and reading the book's a great way of doing this, minus the selfless plug, right? But it is objectively a great way of just learning some of these arguments, because people will tend to say the same things over and over again. So having a good response to that's really important. So just taking some time to educate ourselves, number one. Secondly, practice. Now, that doesn't mean we have to go into conversations with non-vegan friends and family. It might mean practicing with vegans in our lives, setting up like a dummy conversation.
That's a good idea.
When actors are rehearsing their scripts, they're rehearsing with a friend, with a family member, or they're saying it out loud. They're getting used to saying and vocalizing what it is they need to say. And I think it's the same for us. It's just get used to saying what it is you want to say, because often we can know what we want to say, but actually physically saying it can be difficult. So getting used to, hearing those words being vocalized and getting used to saying it can be really powerful, because it means we're less likely to get flustered or frustrated in a conversation when we can't get our words out properly. So practicing is important. And then I think at the same time, as well as practicing, I think we have to take a moment to practice listening, I suppose, as well. When we have a conversation with someone, the last thing we want to do is end up in an argument where we're speaking over each other progressively louder and louder, and it's becoming more heated and flustered. That's not what we want. So I think practicing listening is very important. And listening allows us to dissect people's arguments further, because we can hear the nuances of the language they're using. We can pick up on certain things they're insinuating, and we can lead with that. And we can try and get to understand people's emotions better. And as a consequence of that, we can ask them to reflect on what they're saying more. Rather than thinking, what's my next question going to be because of what I want to say? What's my next question going to be based on what they're saying to me? So I think listening is very important. The empathy, again, aspect is very important. And validation. Now, validating, again, doesn't mean agreeing with someone. It just means trying to understand how they've got to that conclusion. So if someone says, being vegan is very unhealthy, what about iron and protein? You can say, well, look, I understand why you'd be worried about that. We've been told that we need to eat red meat for iron, and animal products are a great source of protein. Look, I understand why you feel that way, but have you considered the fact that we can get protein and iron from plants, and this is supported by the British Dietetic Association, blah, blah, blah. So that validation shows that we're listening, and it shows we're not being condescending or insincere with the person, that we're empathizing and reflecting on why they've said that, and not caricaturing them as being an unintelligent or uneducated or bad because of what they're saying. We're understanding the process that's allowed them to get to that point. That definitely helps as well.
I've got a story recently. A good friend of mine who's been vegan for about 7 years, is very aware of all the issues, has been buying like woolen jumpers and leather shoes. And I've called them out on it in a nice way, not in a nasty, aggressive way. And they have sort of reacted with a sort of not aggressive, but being quite upset with me. I'm not the boss of them. I shouldn't be policing their actions. Have you got any advice for me how to deal with this situation? Because it's obviously, it does hurt when you have a good friend or a family member who's been with you on this vegan journey for a long time, and then they might start eating meat again, or they might start buying animal products. What's the best way in your view to deal with something like this?
Well, I think firstly, we shouldn't resort to tactics like being, calling people names and being cruel to people and saying things that are obviously untoward. And I think vegans can fall into that trap, because obviously it's such an emotional thing that when someone starts harming animals again when they don't need to, of course our automatic reaction is to be like, you're a terrible person. And sometimes that may be true, but ultimately, is that an effective way of publicly communicating our feelings? That's not true. So what we need to do, I think, is just deploy the same tactics we always have. Just, why is this wrong? Why was what they're doing something they shouldn't be doing? And people will react with indignation, because by going, oh, look, that's making me feel upset, they can try and go, oh, look, I'm the victim here. And we all sometimes like to play the victim card and have that victim mentality, because it removes the accountability that we need to have, because we go, oh, look, you're being mean to me. And it's like, well, actually, no, I'm just trying to hold up the mirror to yourself to say, look, you're being mean to others, and this isn't something that aligns with your values. So I think it's always that question of, how does this action this person's partaking in actually align with the values that they have, and trying to get them to recognize there is that disalignment that has occurred. And maybe that's something you could do with your friend to say, Would you kill the cow yourself for that leather jacket or those leather shoes? Would you want to send the lamb to the slaughterhouse and pull the blade across their throat yourself for the woolen jacket? And if you wouldn't, then you've recognized that it's not a moral thing to do. So encouraging someone to see the disconnection in their moral compass and the actions they're partaking in is more powerful than calling someone a name because they've done something that is obviously wrong, but has made us feel emotional in a way that we're not being effective anymore.